cultural events person did not show up tonight. So there is a sign-up sheet up here if you just put your name and student number down after the reading's over, and we'll make sure that you get covered for the cultural events credit.
Faculty number 2 will work?
Yeah, because I know you're a couple of short.
No, I am.
You gotta make sure that you get somewhere. Please allow me to introduce. This is the moment when I ask you, the audience, to turn off your cell phones, put away your iPods and calculators, your statistics and management textbooks, and return your seats and tray tables to their locked and upright positions. This is the moment when I inform you, the audience, that several of Michael Martone's books are here at this table, available for sale, and that he, Martone, will be more than happy to sign any of them for you at the conclusion of this event. They include Michael Martone, Unconventions, Attempting the Art of Craft and the Craft of Art, The Blue Guide to Indiana, The Flatness and Other Landscapes, winner of the AWP Award for Creative Nonfiction, and Double Wide, Collected Fiction of Michael Martone. They're all very good. Why not buy 2? The introduction is already underway, in a way. I have mentioned the name of our speaker and indicated simply by standing here that we're about to start. But now I begin again, sort of, for real. I have only been clearing the decks, as it were, in preparation for Michael Martone was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and grew up there, attending the public schools. He is the author of portions of this introduction and the previously mentioned books, quote, here at this table, end quote. And here is where I demonstrate that I have read Martone's work and understood it. Or perhaps, knowing Martone as I do, having been his student at the creative writing program at the University of Alabama, where he now still teaches, I might relate a humorous anecdote about our time together, such as that week before spring break, when Martone asked me whether I would be interested in cutting, trimming, and applying fertilizer to his lawn. Martone did not oversee my labor with the caustic chemical and never said anything to me about the ensuing disaster, preferring to write about it on page 130 of his book, Michael Martone, using many of the same words that I have here and replacing my name with his own and his own with John Barth's, who was Martone's own mentor at the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, where he, Martone, claims this fiction really took place. Really. Having fulfilled your expectations of an introduction by demonstrating a significant familiarity with the work and/or person of Martone, I would conclude by saying, please join me in welcoming Michael Martone, and we would all clap and then be quiet, letting the reader read. Footnote. But what I am really thinking about, or perhaps what I will be thinking about after I take my seat, is that painting by René Magritte that I saw this morning reproduced in slightly altered form on the cover of my copy of Roland Barthes' image music text. You know, that painting of the pipe with the words, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," peep, in neat cursive underneath. This is not a pipe. And it's true, it's an image of a pipe. And I might be thinking how, similarly, what Martone is now, that is, what Martone will be doing when I am thinking this, is not a reading, but rather a representation or satire of a reading. Ceci n'est pas un reading, I might think. And as I am thinking this, Martone will be amusing and perplexing me with his representation of a reading of writing, at least some of it his, that mostly realistically reproduces a real world that is not quite real. Not quite the real Fort Wayne, Indiana, say. And that, quote, not quite, being, well, the real point. The real point being the drawing of your attention to the transaction between author and audience, between all writing and its readers, as Roland Barthes might have put it in my copy of image music text. That no matter what we are hearing, fiction, nonfiction, news, weather, the State of the Union, these representations of the real are always representations, always fictions, and that is a very important way to read and think when we, the global audience, make so many important decisions based on what we or someone would like to insist is real. Ceci n'est pas Michael Martone, I might think then, and this is now where we all clap and welcome his representation to Berry College.
Thanks a lot for coming out, especially on a Thursday. I'm glad it's a Thursday, though we have the tournament going on, right? So you've got your machine set up. It's terrible to give a reading on Tuesdays, especially when Gilmore Girls was good. Nobody really wanted to be here, and I'm really glad that you are getting credit in some way for being here and suffering through this. Michael, it was a great introduction, thank you. But I have to ask you at least to actually turn your cell phones on now. It's been my, what's often happened to me when I do readings is you're out there and you think, well, he can't see me. Well, of course I can see you. And so I was at a reading in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and I noticed that most of the people out in the audience were text messaging each other. And I stopped the reading and I said, well, who are you text messaging? And they all pointed at each other in the room. And I thought, this is a terrific idea. So if you would turn your cell phones on right now, but turn the ringer off, and so you can text message, I will give you my phone number. So you can text message me while the reading is going on. Are you ready? 205-310-2932. And it costs 5 cents too, so don't, 205-310-2932. Now I don't have my cell phone on. I mean, I'll continue. I know, but all right, so that'll be a fun thing to do. I also write very short things too, so if it gets boring, believe me, I'll be moving on pretty quick. I'm going to start with something from the book, Michael Martone, and I said it at previous readings that I always liked books that have just names for titles, David Copperfield, Jane Eyre, Michael Martone. And so what it is, it's a book made up of contributors' notes, and some of you know that. I mean, you've read magazines, there's always that little part in the back or maybe in the front or right there by the article that has a little contributor's note. It's usually the same thing. Michael Martone grew up here, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so I wrote a whole lot of contributors' notes, and I'd send it off to magazines, and the people maybe would take these little contributors' notes, and then they would send me a notice that they had taken it, and could you please send us a contributor's note? And so I would send another one of my contributor's notes. They said, no, send a real contributor's note. And what I really wanted to happen was for my contributor's note to show up in the contributor's notes, not in the front part of the magazine. So, I know, very complicated, very short. I'll just give you an example. Michael Martone was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and was educated in the public schools there. His first published work, a poem titled Recharging Time, and a character sketch, Tim, the Experience, about his brother, appeared in The Forum, an annual literary magazine produced by the school system featuring the contributions of its students. His mother, a high school freshman English teacher at the time, in fact wrote the poem and the character sketch, signing her son's name to the work and sending it to the editor, another English teacher at a Southside Junior High School who had been a sorority sister of hers, Kappa Alpha Theta, in college. Indeed, most of his papers written for school were written by his mother. Examples include English research papers, history term papers, translations from the Latin, speeches, and lab reports. It began innocently enough with his mother writing his essays, the prose supposedly dictated by the son to his mother, whose penmanship was far and away more legible. This arrangement, her son sitting across the kitchen table, in a sense, thinking out loud as she transcribed his thoughts with the same pen she used to grade her own students' papers, engendered in her a very active editorial intervention which began to shape the spontaneous utterances emanating from her son. Soon this situation evolved to the point where her son sat silently while she wrote an original response to his initial prompt. Once she finished the first draft, she read it back to her son, who made a few minor suggestions as to form, style, and content. It was at this time and under these conditions that Martone began thinking of himself as a writer. His mother promoted that view in other ways, announcing to her friends at the local chapter of the Educational Honorary that her son had an aptitude for writing. The collaboration continued through college, where the assignments were mailed home or returned, or in some extreme cases, the prose response was communicated via the telephone and copied out in a rather cramped and illegible longhand in the dormitory phone booth. Most of Martone's first book of stories and his occasional essays on the subject of writing, and published under his own name, were written by his mother, who learned finally to type in 1979, the year she wrote his graduate thesis. Today, Martone receives microcassette recordings of from his mother. His mother has made of his future work, with the hard copy arriving by fax or courier with little or no interaction between the collaborators prior to the work's appearance. Martone is hard-pressed to tell you what exactly of his published work could truly be said to be his original contribution, if any, including this contributor's note and the contribution published somewhere else in this magazine. So there are 50 of those types of contributor's notes, and that's in the book Michael Martone. I'm going to read something new now. I'm working on a book called 4 for a Quarter. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But they're just various things that come in groups of 4. And this is from a group that's about time, a leap second, a leap day, a leap year, and then just a simple leap. So I'll start to read the leap second. You know about leap seconds? You know, every once in a while they add a second to time. You know about this? It's really cool. I mean, cool in a kind of nerdy way. If you listen to the official clock out in Colorado, it makes a beeping sound for each second. But when they add a leap second, it has 2 pauses. It adds another second. The reason you have to add a second to time is that the Earth is slowing down from friction, and eventually it will stop, as this thing said. So they have to, add another second to let time catch up to the Earth. I like that. So this is just a little sort of sad little love poem. He opened the box of extra seconds, letting them warm to room temperature. The seconds, packed in like eggs, hummed in the carton. He turned to the window to pass the time. Later, he would select 1 second and add it to the official time. But for now, he thought about what had happened. Outside, it was snowing. It seemed to always snow at this time, at times like this. The snow was a kind of static in the window. Not long ago, she had said it was over. This was over. A moment before, they had been a they, and then. One day, way before that moment, they would no longer be a they. There had been that other moment, a moment when they had become a they. Time passed as he thought of these 2 distinct points in time. Outside, it snowed regularly. The Earth was slowing down. One day it would stop altogether, but that wouldn't be for a very long time. Meanwhile, time needed to be corrected, brought up to date. Another extra second needed to be added in order for time to synchronize with the decaying speed of the world, the planet stalling. He will spend the rest of his life doing this, what he is doing now, turning to the box, his hand hovering over the thrumming seconds as if to select a chocolate from a sampler. The rest of his life will be an accumulation of these seconds. Suddenly, he thinks. You guys get this new internet thing? I mean, it's wild. It's very wild. It's crazy. There's something on there. I don't know, who's controlling the pipeline here, but do you get a little site called nerve.com? Anybody ever go to nerve.com? Yeah. Oh, thumbs up in the back there. Nerve.com, it's subtitled, do you remember? Literary, and this is a literary evening, literary smut. Right? Doesn't that sound good? Yeah. And so I got a call from the editor at nerve.com, and believe it or not, her name is Susan Dominus. Okay. And so she asked me to do something, and really, kids, you should try this at home. Though I don't see it here. You should try it at home. She wanted me to do something for the magazine called objectification. And what you have to do, and as I say, try it at home, you have to get an object out of the world and eroticize it, make it sexy. Just any object. Except there are 2 rules. One rule is you can't use an object that's already been eroticized. So no whips, chains, no shoes, you can't do that. It has to be neutral. Plus, Susan said, you can't use any object that is personally erotic. Now, I don't know how she would know that. But okay, I said, all right, I'm going to find something. And so what I chose, thought about it, but I can't find one here. I chose finally to write about a thermostat. I mean, you know what the thermostat, I don't see, where is it in here? There's got to be one in here. I mean, it's the little, where is it? Is it over there? I mean, so it's the little box that controls the heat and temperature in a room. But I'm writing about a specific thermostat, a specific kind of thermostat. And so, anyway, this actually was rejected. It wasn't sexy enough, so, but okay. Really, so try it at home. It's a great thing. I touch it every day. A secular mezuzah at the threshold of climactic change. On the wall at eye level, a floor above the furnace it regulates, it is connected and remote. A hemispheric sconce embossed with the proprietary brand on the clear bubble, Honeywell. With the thread of my fingertips, I nudge the clear cleats of the inner ring delicately, dialing a save toward the triggering calibration of the two fine red needles, one below indicating its shadow falling upon the numbered scale, how it feels, and the other on top, quivering as it inches toward the desired state. I'm thinking I'm cooking. I think this is great. Then I go and blow it in the next line. Henry Dreyfuss designed it. Just another mechanical object in the stream of streamlining, modern to imagine everything smoothed, rounded, shaped by constant manipulation, the wearing away. Friction as artist, all that metal in your hands, pliant, malleable, plastic even, warm to the touch, to the point of melting, molding into those organic solids of French curves, so that even the most inanimate of things looked, when not moving, to move. Everything designed for speed, molting molecule by molecule, thin peelings of skin, a response to the constant abrasion of invisibly moving air, the rubbing away, the erasure to the point of sculpted cupped parentheses, perfectly still, but still in motion. Thermostat, heat of course, but in stat cleaves both the sense of the immediate, the stat of the televised code blues, the stat of passive regulation. Stationary, statistics, standstill, the instrument for feedback, as is skin, a touch, a response to touch, the shiver, the twitch, the goose flesh, the blush. Mine is anodized. Beneath the cowling, the mechanism of static, the watch spring in the bulb of quaking quicksilver that trembles on its mirrored surface, responding to the eddies of my breath, and when I stop breathing, to the reverb of my heart, transmitted through the cold, cold air. I touch it, and touching it, I ease the imagined temperature past the ambient one. At that moment, deep in the house, I feel that sound like the distant launching of mortars, an inhalation of air as the oxygen in the room around me is drawn down the returns, the jets of blue flame igniting somewhere. So Susan said, she said, you think you're being really explicit, don't you? And I said, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it's really pretty explicit. He said, well, our readers can take a little bit more. So if you want to see the edited thing, go online to nerd.com and you can find it there. All right, so now I'm going to do something from Blue Guide to Indiana. And what I did with Blue Guide to Indiana, you know the Blue Guides, the Blue Guide to Greece, the Blue Guide to London, those travel guides, right? I always tell my students that I can't do character and I can't do plot. So I don't do it. I come up with ways of doing fiction that has no character, has no plot. It's a travel guide. There are no characters, no plot. And it's a travel, the joke is, it's a travel guide to Indiana, because who would travel to Indiana? I mean, even people in Indiana don't, hey, oh, you're from Indiana? Where in Indiana? Oh, yeah, so, but do you go traveling in Indiana? No, of course not. Why would you travel in Indiana? Time to go to Georgia. And so I wrote this book of made-up places, things to do in Indiana, and instead of publishing them in literary magazines, I published them in newspapers in Indiana, as actual things to do. The joke being, if I could get them close enough, people, would maybe go there. Okay, so like the blue guides to France and Rome, and not Rome, Georgia, but Rome. There are various tours you can take, and so I thought I would start by reading you the death tour. There are other tours. There's like the sex tour, of course. There is the tour of very cool waste industrial sites. There's also menus. There's a cookbook, an Indiana cookbook in the book. And so again, as I said, no characters, no plot. So here are 4 different things you can do while you're in Indiana on the death tour. This is actually true. The largest nudist colony in the world is in Indiana. She knows that. She's blushing nicely. Sunset Lawns and the Bronze Mortuary, the cemetery at Naked City, Roselawn. Outside the walls of the nation's largest and most popular nudist colony, enclosed within its own 10-foot palisade of ivy-covered, sun-cured California redwood, is the cemetery at Naked City. Landscaped by Frederick Law Olmsted, that's a sort of running joke. Everything is landscaped by Frederick Law Olmsted. The designer of New York's Central Park, the 75 acres of rolling wooded hills serves as the final resting place for hundreds of the nation's most enthusiastic sun enthusiasts who have been interred here in the nude. Designed to offer contemplative sanctuary for the visitor and family member alike, the cemetery provides detailed maps to the plots of the more notable permanent residents, while encouraging the non-grieving bird watcher and mushroom hunter as well. Clothing is optional as you stroll through the groves of quaking Lombardy poplars, reading the telling epithets on the impressive undressed marble headstones. The bronze mortuary on the grounds provides funeral parlors, chapels, changing rooms for those attending the final rites of the recently departed. At the wakes, only the simplest of net veils are suggested for the ladies. The tanned remains of the recently departed are viewed in their all-together, reposing peacefully on clear plastic air mattresses in specially designed, polished, and transparent plexiglass coffins. You move a little bit to the east in Indiana from Roselawn, you get to Valparaiso and the tomb of Orville Redenbacher. Outside the tomb proper, one approaches through a maze of demonstration plots displaying the plantings of varietal popcorn strains developed by Orville Redenbacher when he was an agricultural extension agent. During the growing season, hand-picked Hoosier high schoolers perform the necessary tasks of detasseling and deroguing the plants. Anybody ever detassel or derogue plants? Nah, that's a Midwestern thing. Detasseling and deroguing the plants and enthusiastically discuss with the visitor the intriguing sex life of corn. The tomb, designed by the architect Michael Graves of corrugated steel sheeting and weathered barnwood, is an exact reproduction of the Indiana Pavilion constructed for the Chicago-Columbia Exposition of 1892, which itself reproduces the exact dimensions of the Parthenon on the Acropolis in Athens. The marble of the Doric order columns has been replaced with glass, encasing within each pillar a colorful array of unpopped kernels of corn. The frieze reproduces the history of maize in America and its transmission to a grateful Europe. Bring binoculars to view the 56 metopies, which are carved to narrate the life of Orville Redenbacher. The third panel shows the infant Orville nursing at the breast of Demeter and Ceres. The 24th details the procedure for tying a bow tie. The 39th commemorates the invention of the microwave. Each spring, the citizens of Valparaiso and Porter County reenact the grand procession from the tomb to the birthplace in a Lutheran version of the ancient Eleusinian mysteries. You move again further east across the top of Indiana to Goshen, and the National Monument for those killed by tornadoes in trailer parks and mobile home courts, intersection of US 33 and Indiana 119. Outside the memorial cenotaph is the famous cinder block wall, where the names of those who lost their lives during cyclonic conditions are inscribed by Amish craftsmen with 10-penny nails. Mementos left here by visitors are collected and displayed in the adjacent museum, half a double-wide mobile home, where such personal effects may be viewed through the 100 mm plastic sheeting which covers the open wall. The cenotaph itself is carved from Bedford limestone by Italian immigrants who have worked on European cathedrals and is sculpted to resemble a life-size reproduction of an Airstream trailer. Surrounded by an intensive complex of working factories dedicated to the manufacturing of recreational vehicles, van conversions, fifth wheels, trailers, mobile homes, and cyclone fencing, the memorial is bathed in the ambient noise of whirlwind construction. This cacophony is only interrupted by the rigorously scheduled, specially chartered freight train, which roars back and forth on the siding hard by the site, triggering the warning blasts of antique sirens and creating a sound, it is said by the old-timers who serves as guide, just like that of a real tornado. And finally, we move a little bit south to Batesville. And you probably know about Batesville as the place where the famous Batesville coffins are made. All the Kennedys are buried in Batesville coffins. And there we find the Federal Research and Testing Center for Coffin and Casket Standards, Tony Holman Industrial Park, Batesville. Outside this sprawling, state-of-the-art facility, dozens of simulated grave sites are personally monitored by crack teams of research scientists from the vantage of underground booths adjacent to the decaying burial apparati and visually accessible by means of unique glass-walled cutaway crypts. During month-long shifts at their subterranean stations, the researchers record their findings using such indices as accumulated hydrodynamics, petrification, and the proliferation of nematode and maggot infestation while filming the process of miracle of the in time-lapse photography. Above ground, their technicians perform exhaustive testing on every make and model of casket and coffin marketed in America's graveyards and cemeteries. Special machines repeatedly slam lids, silk linings and pillows are set on fire, caskets are dropped from bone-jarring heights, seals and gaskets endure the high pressures generated in the massive wind tunnels. Most interesting is the preparation of the test corpses for burial. Obsolete crash test dummies designated as surplus by the National Highway Safety Council are then dressed by experts in an organic flesh of a meat-like substance invented by the center's own staff before being placed on board the test platform and lowered into the very real earth. So that's the death tour. After that came out in a little newspaper in southern Indiana, I got a call from a reporter at the Washington Post. And he said he was doing an article on little-known federal facilities. And he got a lead that there was this one in Indiana and had to do with caskets and coffins. Do you know anything about that? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And so I thought for a second. I said, well, you know, I made that up. And he said, ooh, he said, that was one of the better ones. There is also the art tour of Indiana. And unlike the death tour and the sex tour and all the other ones that have several sites to visit, there's only one place to go for art in Indiana, and that's Muncie, Indiana. Anybody been to Muncie? Anybody know anything about Muncie? Yeah, you been to Muncie?
My mom was born there.
Oh, she's not there now, though, is she? No, she's out of there. Muncie is where Ball State University is, where David Letterman graduated, and you know about David Letterman. You know, his scholarship there is that you have to maintain a C or below in order to keep the, and so the David Letterman scholarship. And Ball State, the Ball State Cardinals, it's named for the Ball brothers, who were the inventors of the Ball jar, the famous canning jar. So that's where the money comes from. But let me ask you this. You guys all look like people who are probably watching PBS, public broadcasting left and right. So what do you think is like one of the most, the famous, one of their most popular shows? What are some of your ideas about that? The most popular show. And the one I'm thinking about, it's very hot with the kids. Sesame Street, a very good show, been on a long time. Not the one I'm thinking about though. But it is also very popular with the kids. But the kids I was talking about are like you kids. Okay. So what?
Anne of Green Gables.
Anne of Green Gables. Well, that's a good one. I love Anne of Green Gables. I've actually been to the Green Gables, but no, that isn't what I was thinking.
Arthur?
What?
Author?
Author? No.
Antiques Roadshow.
Antiques Roadshow, also good. Also very hot, very popular. No. Let me see. You probably recall. I'll have to give you. There's a guy on public television. He has a what? No. With a big afro.
Awesome.
He's awesome. That's right. And you know this guy? He's got the big hair, and He sits in front of an easel and he paints the same thing over and over again.
He has happy trees.
What, who? Bob Ross. Yes, yes, everybody's going, I know that. It's incredibly popular with the public television. I don't know why the kids love to watch it, but the kids love to watch this guy paint over and over again. Can anyone explain that? I don't know. And he's going, oh, he says, oh, I think there's a little, there's a tree right there. So, guess what? He's from Indiana. He's from Muncie, as a matter of fact. And so on the art tour in the Blue Guide, the only place you can go is to the Musée de Bob Ross in Muncie. And I love saying that, the Musée de Bob Ross. So I'll read that section here. Housed in a converted and renovated Ball Brothers department store in downtown Muncie, the Musée de Bob Ross is home to the world's largest collection of works by the late master Bob Ross. Over 8,000 paintings are in inventory, while several hundred are displayed at any one time in the museum's 12 galleries. The characteristic landscapes and seascapes, most of them painted live while being taped during the widely syndicated television show produced by Muncie Public TV, are displayed chronologically to give the visitor a sense of Ross's progression of technique and his many chromatic periods, which culminate in the final umber phase predominant at the time of his untimely death. With a palette more extensive than every major artist save Delacroix, Mr. Ross's repetitive renderings of his special motif, a placid lake and an ancient fir forest, is made new with each painting. The artist's actual palettes are themselves displayed on the mezzanine, where the visitor can appreciate Bob Ross's meticulous craft in the mixing of his paints, preserved in a kind of fossil record, which, in its energy and elan, rivals the most enthusiastic abstract expressionist works. Also of interest is the faithful recreation of the artist's studio in what was once woman's lingerie, where Mr. Ross's easels, his primed and stretched canvases, his tubes of paint are arranged in the manner they were found upon his passing. Here too are the myriad varieties of brushes and palette knives, as well as his extensive collection of combs and hair picks, and a selection of his favorite models, such as a potted Norfolk Island pine, a boulder from Jasper Beach in Maine, and a sky chart from the National Aeronautic and Space Administration showing the different categories of clouds. In the museum's entry vestibule, a bank of television monitors constantly features tapes of the master at work. Those tapes, along with posters, postcards, and refrigerator magnet reproductions of that work, may be purchased in the tastefully appointed gift shop, where the visitor will also discover the complete library of Mr. Ross instructional media. There's also the Happy Little Tree Cafe, which specializes in Nouvelle cuisine. A friend of mine actually teaches at Ball State University, and he's rich. I mean, if you guys are going into the academic stuff, textbooks, that's where the money is. So he made a lot of money on a textbook at work. And so he said to me, when I read this to him, he said, I'm going to buy you one of the Bob Rosses. I'm going to find a Bob Ross and I'm going to get it. I think he thought $6,000 for an original Bob Ross. He found it. And he actually bought it. I told you he was rich. He donated it to Ball State University. And so there is an original Bob Ross in, like these pictures out here. So I didn't get the painting, but it was cool. I wrote a book. People from Ohio and Virginia argue constantly about who has had the most presidents. But ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, there is no argument for which state has produced the most vice presidents. Say it. Indiana. We have produced 5 vice presidents. 3 more were on tickets that were not elected. So 5 vice presidents, and you know some of them, right? Like Schuyler Colfax, you remember him. John Marshall, who said what this country needs is a good 5-cent cigar. I mean, giants. And so I wrote a book called Pensies, The Thoughts of Dan Quayle. Not Pensées, but Pensies, The Thoughts of Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle was my representative in Congress when I published my first book. And I sent him my copy of my first book because that's what you would do in Indiana. You would send it to your representative. He wrote back a nice note that said, "Your heartwarming stories of Indiana make us all proud. Keep up the good work." So when it came time to write this book, I have that framed. It's in my office. I thought, he gave me permission. So I wrote a book called Pensées, The Thoughts of Dan Quayle, or to translate, that's Thoughts, The Thoughts of Dan Quayle. And when we published it, we wanted it to look like Mao's book. You kids are too young for this, but there used to be a guy in China, Mao Zedong, and he had this little red book of his thoughts and poems. And so my book of Dan Quayle's thoughts looks exactly like Mao's book, except his book was red and this one is gray. What else did he do? Oh, Dan Quayle's, I mean, you remember Dan Quayle, right? As vice president of the first George Bush, yeah, okay. He was, his family owned the newspaper in Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Star. And we brought my book out the same day that Dan Quayle brought out his own thoughts book, I mean his own, because he's running for president. And so the Indianapolis Star was doing a kind of Citizen Kane on that book. It was covering it as a news story, and as a literary story, as a business story, as a political story. And so they covered my book, not as a literary book, but as a news sidebar. So a reporter went to Quayle and said, "What do you think of this Michael Martone in his book?" And Dan Quayle, and I love this quote, Dan Quayle said, "Who's he?" So, that's okay, so it's Pensées, The Thoughts of Dan Quayle. There are 12 thoughts. I'm going to read one thought. Yeah, there are other, and like Pascal, they're all on something. One is on anesthesia, on the State of the Union, on the Planet of the Apes, and this one is on snipe hunting. Now, how many of you know what snipe hunting is? How many of you don't know what snipe hunting is? Okay, notice who doesn't know what snipe hunting is, and we'll take them out later. And especially in a place like this, my gosh, this is prime snipe hunting territory. Okay, you'll get what it is. Okay, so you get the concept here. It's only a 250-word story. This has already taken 27 minutes. It's a 250-word story. Dan Quayle, he's thinking, you know, so it's in his voice, Dan Quayle. And it's on snipe hunting. They told me to wait. So I wait. They gave me a burlap sack and pushed me out of the car into the ditch next to the field. I watched the taillights disappear. They told me they would drive the snipes my way. Wait here. And I do. Stars are in the sky. I'm in a midfield. The branches of the low bushes brush up against my legs, releasing the reeking smell. I think, suddenly, they are not coming back. Back home, they are waiting for me to figure out they are not coming back. They are thinking of this moment, the one happening now, when I think this thought, that they're not coming back. And then I come home on my own. But, I think, I'll wait. While waiting, I'll think of them waiting for me to return home with the empty burlap sack. They'll think that I haven't thought yet that I was left here in the midfield, and I am waiting for them to drive the snipes my way. I'll let them think that. In the morning, I'll be here, waiting. They will come back looking for me. Dew will have collected on the mint bushes. The stars will be there, but they'll be invisible. And I won't have thought that thought yet, the one they wanted me to think. The imaginary quarry is still real and still being driven my way. If you do actually travel in Indiana, Dan Quayle is the only vice president who has his own vice presidential library. All the presidents have their libraries, but only one vice president is Dan Quayle. It's in Huntington, Indiana, and it is great. And it's a great website, a terrific gift shop. I have highball glasses, golf towels, signed pictures of Dan. So I took a couple of the books up there to donate to the library, and for a second they were a little bit skeptical. But then I finally convinced them, and they took a couple, and then I took the donation off my taxes, and we were all happy. All right, so this is it. See, I told you, it's almost over now. It hasn't been bad, right? I mean, you're almost through it. This is going to be the longest story of the evening, but it's already broken up into 4 little bits. It is another 4 for a quarter. As I said earlier, I'm doing these things, you know, like the 4 chambers of the heart, the 4 corners of the earth. There are 4 I states. There are the 4H, 4F, the Fab 4, the 4-stroke engine, 4 is the only number that has the number it is of letters in the name. I mean, you'll think, you think a lot. +4s, the 4 in a hand tie, a lot of 4s. I've been working on this 4s for a long time. This is about a comic book group. They made a terrible movie about them called The Fantastic Four, right? And not only that, they're making probably a terrible sequel to it right now too, though the Silver Surfer is in it. Now, some of you out there probably don't read comic books, others of you do. If you do, the house is divided. You're either a DC person or you're a Marvel person. The Fantastic Four was a Marvel group. All you need to know about, if you're not an aficionado, the aficionados can correct me later, but if you're not an aficionado, here's what you need to know. 4 people were sent into outer space, and correct me if I'm wrong, where they were cosmically irradiated, and then they returned significantly changed. Okay? All right, so this is from, the book. Oh, it's from a book. Did I tell you the name of the book? 4 for a Quarter? And that's from the photo booth things. Remember those photo booths? They're now like 4 for $2. You find them maybe at beaches. But you went in and you took 4 pictures. I have my students actually tell a story by means of photo booth. And it's not the one that takes 1 picture 4 times. It's one that has to be in sequence. And I like that sequence, where you go, and then the third one is like, what the hell? And then the fourth one is, oh, better get a good one. So it's that thing, And then I like that do. I like that little sort of pattern there. So that's where the title of the book comes, 4 for a Quarter. Okay, so there's the last one, and I guess you want me to take questions after this, but hey, thanks for coming out. I hope it wasn't, it's not like dentistry, but it's close. Okay. The sex life of the Fantastic Four. I forgot to tell you that, didn't I? The sex life of the Fantastic Four. So there are going to be 4 monologues. Invisible Girl. Where he touches me, I vanish. The back of his hand stroking my face erases my cheek. Involuntary, the skin initially, then the deeper flesh. The skin first gone, when it feels his fingertips, I feel the surface disappear, but still feeling there. His touch sinks in, the subdermal layers go, the nested cells he polishes clear, his soft palm hovering. By the time I've stripped off the blue bodysuit, stepping out of the spandex which retains, for a second, the shape of my body as it falls, the body it reveals has already become translucent, the meat turning milky, the bone wiped clear in streaks like a smear of butter melts the white from a paper plate. I become clarified grease beneath him. Entwined, we are tangled up in the skein of my airy sinew, the ropey braids of my circulatory system, its cartoon of primary reds and blues. My blood thins in the extremities but knots at the nodes of erectile tissue, clotting a nipple visible again beneath the sheen he has left from licking what looked a moment before like air. Now, me, there, concentrated into rubbery ruby light again. It disappears into his mouth. I'm down to the broken dashes of the central nervous system, suggesting still outlining the outer neural net of my skin, feeding me the synaptic code of dots and dits from the dissipating periphery. His hands, as they caress nothing, reveal me to myself, leave the after image of his movement burned upon the transparent wall of my retina, the lightning streak of his skin shaping the borders of my own body. I close my eyes and watch as my eyelids dissolve. My vision passes through skin first, turning then to scrim, to see now through another unoccluded lens. I see through my lids, through myself, see his cock clearly moving inside the vast and now empty space, which must be me and must be not me. The Human Torch. I sit at the bar usually, drinking ouzo, neat, a Jordan almond dissolving at the bottom of the shot glass. I have set the liqueur on fire, swizzling it with my finger. I like to watch the floor show and the show on the floor. The tunnel crowd weirded out by the drag queens doing strip teases or singing old torch songs. One more for my baby, one more for the road, sending up Lady Day or Barbara, that kind of thing. I dump some water into the aperitif, extinguishing the blue flame and turning the drink chalky like a precipitate in a test tube. My current favorite is a Liza interpreter who vamps this obscure number, Is It by Mercer, which plays with the line, "You've let yourself go." She sings to her lug of a lover how he has grown fat and dull, how their liaison has suffered the consequences. There follows a litany of complaint. What a schlub, she sings, "You've let yourself go." But it turns in the end. It always turns. "Come over here," she whispers. "Come over and let yourself go." I tear up naturally, but it isn't saline staining my cheek. It's a dab of molten lava percolating there in the corner of my eye, my own brand of running mascara. I have to watch myself. Spontaneously, my eyelashes can ignite, throwing sparks up into the tinder of my eyebrows, which can smolder for hours without me knowing. Once I set the sprinklers off in the Russian bathhouse on 10th. I've stopped looking for a boy who can top me. It's too dangerous. The leather bar is too hot. I was cooking inside the horsehide Eisenhower jacket, cooking the jacket, the seared meat smell, an additional turn-on, I suppose. These powers we've acquired seem to fall into the dark space between the involuntary response wired into us all and those we can modulate. Not like the heartbeat on the one hand or walking home on the other, but like blinking or winking, say, or like desire itself. There is only so much one can do to help oneself. Oh sure, I can bellow, "Flame on," all I want, followed by the stunning transformation from the solid buff flesh to superheated gaseous vapor. The controlled burn, here precision scalding, there the delicate sweating of copper pipes. But it is in the weaker moments when I'm weak in the knees, a stranger's hand on my hand will steam off skin. I can't watch myself all the time. A human touch sets off this human torch. I am a captive within my sublime hide. Mr. Fantastic. To make the edge of the famous samurai swords of antiquity, the smiths beat the iron flat into a foil, then folded the metal over and hammered it flat again, and then another fold and a peening, and still another and another, thousands of times, fold and flatten, until in this primitive way, through brute force and patience, the metal's crystalline structure became saturated with itself. Atoms packed inside the spaces between atoms, at last both the surface and simultaneously its underside, now no more than a molecule deep, the edge of the matrix serrated only by the minute undulations of subatomic matter, a sine wave spanning a mere handful of angstroms of the outermost electron shell. Sharp, you bet. It is what I find myself doing to my own skin in private moments. I stretch and fold and knead it back together, a wrinkle in the loose hide on my forearm, a flap of fat at my chin. It is the very definition of definition, and I spend hours honing my musculature, ironing in the pleats on my belly, increasing the cant of my cheekbones with the finest shade of a sharpened pencil line. I know what people are thinking. The elasticity of your normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill, uncosmically irradiated penis is itself a goddamn miracle to most. The way it inflates, its skin thinning to the gauziest of tissues, webbed by the diaphanous capillary sponge, grown thick by the stiffened rebar of packed and interlocking corpuscles. Sure, I've tried it all. Swallowed myself whole, took myself and myself from behind. For a while, she liked to watch it snake toward her across the floor, liked the way it coiled up a leg, then threaded the cleft of her rear, whipped around her waist, then back up her back, curling over her shoulder and back down between her breasts, down her stomach, parting her down there, and then her labia and into her from above, how its tensile strength lifted her in this harness, held her weightless as it expanded within her and all around her. We haven't done that in a while. And everything, believe me, grows familiar. Recently, our lovemaking has tended toward the less baroque. A simple vertical embrace, my member remembering its scale from before the accident. Sue, her legs wrapped around my waist, is saddled on my hips, riding this altogether unfantastic appendage, and me supporting her, strapping my silly, pliant arms around her, and then around me, and then around her again. Stretching another lap and lapping another lap, another band around us both, belting us to us. My arms still encircling, encasing us from head to toe, this cocoon spinning while we kiss, my elasticity nearing its end, effaced to the point of transparency, my thinning skin becoming at last the clear outer covering at last of this new creature we create. And finally, the thing. I don't really need the briefs down below since my thing ain't there no more. It's more for show to let the folks know I was once a guy. A scrap of cloth for modesty of the citizens craning their necks to take a gander at me. They can't get past the orangey crust of skin. It's something, all right. Little do they know, I'm all hanging out there for anybody to see. My Johnson, or what I take to be my Johnson, Johnson's really, I don't know, since there's no other thing like me, as far as I can tell, to let me try out these doohickeys of wadded calluses or thingamabobs of oozing mucus, is plopped right there in front of their collective noses. Just more eruptions and rashes on the sliding plates of my scaly surface. The doc explained it to me, showed me the Tinker Toy models of their typical twisted normal gene, and then how mine's been tripled, another worm squirming around the ladder of goofy golf balls. It's simple for everybody but me, male and female down to everybody's bones but me. No bones for me, no in and out, no on and off, a whole other dimension to Nookie. What I become needs a couple other things to reproduce, I guess, not just one other. Sex, as near as I can figure, is like nothing you can dream of, since those dirty pictures your brain's pumping out are made up of, you've got it, those same twin strands caught wrapped up in each other. Well, I am another other, and I'm on the lookout for other others like me. Meantime, when I'm alone, but this could be in the middle of Times freaking Square, a public spectacle where the public can't begin to see the me that's me, I make myself have this nameless thing. I feel this thing. I have no words, no more, for. Thank you very much. The whole schmear. Any questions about anything? Yes?
I could have solved your problem.
Which problem? Which problem? I am willing to be solved, right?
The one you started with tonight.
What's that?
Well, that's what you have entertained us with so nicely. And we're indebted to you for the show you put on.
Well, thank you.
And you
But I don't know who's winning the basketball game, though. I'm really.
Well, I realize you have some guessing to do, but unfortunately, some of us have wondered about your knowledge of the funeral business,
Oh.
because you have referred a whole lot of that, referred to that,
Uh-huh.
and doctors and all that sort of
Uh-huh.
thing. Well, in parting, and this could be the hook you're familiar with.
And you got a hook right there.
I
And
didn't,
those old hooks, taking me off the stage. I like that.
I'm trying to figure out some way to please you with this. This is my wife here, she's already figured it out.
Okay.
She wants to pull my head off. But, let's see, I think I'm about through now. But I am a funeral director.
Oh, you are? Okay, all right. You buried that lead, I think.
I am a licensed...
You know Batesville Caskets then, don't you?
I have been a licensed funeral director,
Uh-huh.
a licensed embalmer, and as an embalmer, I've embalmed, I think, something like 3,000. And I've been on 14,000 ambulance calls, because we owned all the ambulances. And I don't know what else to tell you, because you've touched every base in the planet.
There's a wonderful book. I mean, if you would like to read more, there's a wonderful book by Susan Neville, a friend of mine from Indianapolis, who wrote a book called Fabrication. And what she did was look at a lot of factories in Indiana that were, and she goes to the Batesville Casket Company, and she's writing about various factories, but she goes there. And she's taken into a huge warehouse in the Batesville complex. And she writes about thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of caskets that are, piled up on pallets, high, all the way to the roof. And then there's this wonderful moment in the book where she says, they're all going to be used. And I thought, oh, wow. I mean, talk about replacement, But, when I was a kid growing up in Indiana, we used to sit on the front lawn, try to make the trucks that went by, honk their horns. All the time, those casket trucks went by. Batesville, with a happy little tree on it. It actually does have a happy little tree on it, too. That's right. Well, that's good to know. Any other questions about anything? No.
I don't think anyone in this audience could remotely bother you at all.
No bother. Questions, no bother. Well, thanks.